Hey, everybody. As recruiters, we all know that hiring can be one of the most challenging parts of running a business. Whether you're a startup looking to build a dream team or a well established company aiming to streamline your recruitment process, the right tools can make all the difference. Team Tailor is a powerful all in one recruitment software your candidates and team will love. Team Tailor isn't just a piece of software, it's a way of working. With Team Tailor, you get everything you need in one place: powerful analytics, an AI assistant, customizable workflows, and more. Plus, Team Tailor is super easy to use and implement. You can onboard hiring managers with minimal training and get started right away, thanks to an easy implementation and intuitive, user friendly interface. 94% of teams report better collaboration, and 89% of companies say their hiring process is faster. If you're focused on the candidate experience, it's at the heart of the ATS. Just ask any of the 4 million candidates who connect with customers every month. Join the ranks of over 150,000 recruiters and more than 8,500 companies like Oatly, Porsche, and OneFlow who have transformed their recruitment with Team Tailor. Discover the new way to attract and hire top talent and see the results for yourself. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Rebel TA podcast. You're tuned in with Shannon Pritchett. She is the head of marketing and community at hireEZ. She's also the former editor at SourceCon. She operates the For Recruiters by Recruiters newsletter and Recruiter Therapy. And overall, she's an industry personality. Shannon, it's great to have you.
Thanks. Super stoked to be here.
Well, where are you based and what are you working on?
Well, what am I working on is a loaded question because it's a lot. But I'm based in the Dallas area, in a little city called Grapevine, which many people know because it's the DFW airport's located just in my backyard. I absolutely love the area around here. Lots of industry peeps. Texas is a pretty cool place, and we're still attracting more recruiters to this area.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like I've got a couple of recruiters on speed dial that are in the DFW area. So it's nice to see more emerging voices coming out of the space, new regions. I think there's a conference coming up in the fall in Texas.
Yep.
So it's nice to just see something that's different from the New York, San Francisco, or Vegas scene.
Yes. Yeah. It's really diversified, and it's blew my mind. I came from Nashville, Tennessee. I felt like I was the only recruiter in Nashville. Like, not true, because we had a cool community, but what I was doing from like a sourcing standpoint, I had limited people to bounce ideas off of locally. I remember my friend Matt LeBlanc and I flew out to SourceCon for the first time together back in like 2011, and it was in Silicon Valley. And we were just like, our eyes were just like open to the world of like other people like us. And now I look at, coming here to Dallas, it was just like all these people already lived here. And then now when I go back home to Nashville, I mean, you'll see RecFest there in the fall as well. Nashville's really become a hotspot for sourcing recruiting now. So I guess it had to take me to leave for everyone to come. But I mean, it's really cool to see like this industry so spread out and so diversified and not just siloed on the East and West Coast, like you said.
Maybe you were just ahead of the trend and a trend spotter and a cultural curator. There's something to be said about that in the world of recruiting and sourcing and just being a thought leader in the space. And I think just recognizing that, I love that your LinkedIn slug is still sourcing Shannon.
Yes, I know. I don't want to get away from it. It's something that I'm very passionate about. It's just this week I was looking at the product roadmap and some of the screenshots which was coming down. And I was just like, I got so geeked out and excited about like how we are evolving our product. We've gone from a sourcing tool to a CRM, but the CRM is really heavy in sourcing. And like, after seeing like what's coming out, I was like, oh my gosh, like sourcing is sexy again. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I just want to roll up my sleeves like then and there. It's like, it's still deep inside my roots.
HR got cool.
Well, I don't know about HR getting cool, but TA did.
I think it was, it might have been 2021 now, but I remember seeing like a CNBC article, and it was the top jobs for Gen Z. And within the top 5, it might have even been the top job was corporate recruiter.
Yeah.
And I found it really fascinating as an aging millennial to learn a little bit more about those attributes and motivators of an emerging generation. I feel connected to, boomers and Gen X that tucked me under their wing and turned the lights on for me, gave me opportunity, especially in recruiting and HR, and gave that core training. And now it's this opportunity of how do we continue to be inclusive of new generations, new voices, but also recruiting is evolving.
Yep.
So you're working in-house at hireEZ, which is, well, maybe in your words, why don't you describe a little bit about what hireEZ is and what you're working on?
Yeah, we're on a mission for jobs to find people, right? That's the vision that leads us. Stephen, our CEO, and we have this vision of our sons never having to look for a job when they're older, right? And we want our product to get there. I mentioned how the product has evolved, but we offer so much for recruiters at the top of the funnel, from a CRM to sourcing to automation, analytics. We kind of combine everything, all run by GPT and OpenAI, just to make it easier for recruiters to find candidates and ultimately for those jobs to find people, which is what drives us.
The way you phrased that is candidate centric.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe could you expand on the intentionality behind that?
It's a mistake that we realized a while ago that, when you look at HR technology, we didn't see much evolution in the past 2 decades. It's like there's been some really cool emerging tools. I'll throw our product in a laundry list of ones that have come along, over the years, but they all pretty much put the recruiter at the center of the product. That's the typical SaaS model, right? You put your customer in the center. And there's nothing wrong with that mentality, but talent acquisition is different than any other just standard, SaaS-based tool. By putting the user at the center, of course, you look at adoption and behaviors that drive them and stuff like that. But the ultimate indicator is not necessarily the recruiter. It's the candidate that they're trying to attract. You look at sales or marketing products, right? It's the marketer's not at the center. The prospect is, or the customer is, right? And so that's kind of our evolution with this. It's like, let's put the candidate at the center because that's what the business needs to rely on. So we like to say, like, our product doesn't necessarily belong to us. It doesn't belong to recruiters. It belongs to the people that we're trying to recruit and find. So we're a B2B, but we lead first with that candidate-centric mindset. So all while putting our customers first, of course, but that's, I think, what's unique about our product is we think about the end goal ultimately, which is that hire.
That's awesome. I think ultimately recruiting is a humble practice.
Yeah,
and it's one of the oldest professions. Somebody needs to hire somebody. We know a guy, or figure out how to find the guy or gal and make that introduction known. So when I think about working a rec, it's always back to that first principles thinking of like, how do we find the right person for this role and get to a handshake that's a yes?
Exactly.
Thinking about the product as you've described being candidate centric, we have this emerging generation. How do you think millennials, who are probably the majority of your users, serving tech clients with candidates with a digital profile, can be more inclusive of how Gen Z wants to be recruited, the emerging wave?
It's so different in how we've evolved this industry from referrals to, which is still very much leading the way for all sources of hire, to job boards, to inbound applicants, etc. I remember, if you are my age or older, then you definitely hung on to the ultimate source of hire publication that Career Crossroads used to publish every single year. That was like our Bible. That was our investment. Like you wrote, that was our playbook. And now that source has expanded to so many different medias, social media, email, texting campaigns, obviously phone calls, etc. And so there's not really necessarily a preference of how people like to be found. Candidates still very much like to apply to jobs, and that's good, right? You want that happening because that shows the strength of your employer brand, right? It shows the strength that you're putting jobs out there and people are finding them. But also, too, what we do is we look at the data to say, hey, you don't have enough applicants historically for this position, and you don't have enough previous within your own database. So these are the outbound recommendations that we would use, so you can kind of like supplement your pipeline. And then that will range from any of the different campaigns that I want. It's similar to marketing, right? There's not one marketing channel or tactic that trumps them all. Majority of our leads come in inbound directly from the website. That's good. It's cost efficient. Those people are signing up. They want to talk to sales, right? It's a very good lead for us. But also email works for us. YouTube videos work really well for us. The recruiter therapy stuff works good for us. They're paid ads. I can go on and on events about all the different channels that work. But I think when you can cut the noise and narrow down your success rate, that's ultimately what's going to get that hire for you. I talk about this in FRBR. Recruiting is more luck and timing than anything else. And what are you going to do to put the odds in your favor to get lucky? I think that's what sometimes recruiters forget to deal with, because you can find that perfect candidate, but if they're not ready to switch, then they're not that perfect candidate. So it's what are you doing along the way so that candidate becomes ready at the time that you have an open position, is what many recruiters fail to keep in the back of their head.
I want to repeat that. You said you fail to recognize the value of luck and timing. Mm-hmm. That is such a humble statement for a recruiter and creating a recruiting product, but also something that probably doesn't get enough credit in just the general tech landscape, particularly in the startup world. Luck and timing have so much to do with it. When you articulate that, I think about the difference between pipelining and sourcing.
Yep.
Pipelining being just those daily motions, the rhythms, the outreach, maximizing connection, running campaigns, versus sourcing, which is, hey, I've got a rec, and direct outbound is part of that sourcing motion.
Yeah.
When we think about using data that exists on a database, representing words about an individual's experience, there's a lot of subjectivity or a lot of user input on a profile such as LinkedIn. How do you think a new generation is leveraging the data they're putting on their profile so that it can be accessed by a tool like hireEZ and then put into a feed as a return query for a sourcer using the platform?
I don't think they are. I think that has kind of scaled back dramatically. And I'm using my own testimonials of the friends' kids graduated from college. They've been with their company for 2 years and aren't making much money and need to make that change. I get these questions a lot. Hey, can you take a look at their LinkedIn profile? And I go on there and they are just not filled out, or they're using unrecognizable job descriptions or in titles that might be unique to the company, but they're not necessarily things that you would find on. Case in point, like I always, if I don't know the job, I look up to see other jobs that are like it, just run a quick search, and LinkedIn is a good place, Google, ChatGPT. And when I don't see anything similar, then I go to ChatGPT and I say, okay, what's a similar job? Like, why don't I know this job? And I see a lot of that. I see a lot of lack of efforts. I don't see millennials and the next generation really heavily on LinkedIn. I feel like that's kind of been a decline with the system. I think it's still very much, dominated by more professionals in our space. That has me worried a little bit, because I think that majority of recruiters use LinkedIn and other methods like historically, but I don't think really we've looked at, okay, how are these candidates talking about themselves? Where are they living? And how can we attract them to our organization? And that's hard when you look at the current economy. We're not adding a lot of jobs, and the unemployment rate hasn't really moved the needle very far. And job postings are down 3.5% from where they were last year at this time, which was abysmal as well. So, with that, it's like, how is this new generation who's coming out? How are they going to be finding a job? How are they going to be looking for the job? And like, what career resources are available to them? That I don't see. I think it's still a big problem is you leave college, you get off Handshake, and then all of a sudden now it's like, well, what's next and how do these jobs find me? And that is increasingly more and more difficult with the lack of a digital presence that you're seeing with many of these younger, early career, talented individuals in our space. It's like you can't really source on Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, and our employers running campaigns there. Some are, some aren't. So I think it just makes it a lot more difficult. And I think people are seeing that.
One of the sentiments I keep hearing from both vendors and other recruiters and founders is cutting through noise to get better signal. And I think to an extent, there's like an oversaturation perhaps on LinkedIn of that's where you go to network. That's where a lot of people go to source. It's a sourcing product, sales intelligence product, it's prospecting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of data there, but not all of the features are delivering signal through noise and almost contributing in a negative way, because I think at this point, like everybody knows the growth hack for getting like a top voices badge. If you're newer to LinkedIn, or say you're an earlier stage career recruiter and you see those things, sometimes follower count or a top voices badge or even just good branding
Mm-hmm.
can appear to be signal, but then you get on the phone with a candidate and they're not a match. They don't have the competencies, they don't have the attributes. So I think like we've got this pendulum swing perhaps where there's oversaturation in one channel, but it's still muscle memory for a lot of recruiters. Have you spoken with recruiters who are exploring new tools or ready to maybe step away from LinkedIn, or have, even despite that growth, seen it dry up for delivering signal through noise?
To address the problems with LinkedIn first is they have the worst AI and algorithm of any B2C product that's on the market today, by far. They do not understand their user whatsoever. And I think people often forget it's not a platform for recruiters. They sell a platform to recruiters, but that's not the ultimate intention of LinkedIn. And what LinkedIn does to attract new users is not much. They base it on reputation. Their algorithms don't make sense. They tried to give me a badge the other day that I declined for top voice in HR. I don't talk anything HR. Then I got another one that was like, hey, will you answer this question and we'll get, is it like, I got a message that, will you answer this question and we'll give you the top voice in interviewing feedback or something like that, or interviewing questions. I don't remember what it was. It was something I'd never heard of. And I was like, I don't give that advice either. Like, you're just picking on me. And I don't think I have that many followers. I mean, maybe I do. I don't know.
But no, you're being humble. People know who you are and want to know what you're having to say. And it's really important.
Not in HR, but and I look at the top voices in recruiting industry, and some of them I've never heard of before. And I look at the advices they're giving, and nothing is recruiting oriented. And it's to me, it's like, that's very confusing. And then I was playing around LinkedIn the other day and I noticed that they have a games section now. Like, you can go to LinkedIn and play games. Like what are we doing here? And I'm a fan of Instagram. I like Instagram. It's easy. It's you don't search for influencers. You kind of find influencers, right? And you find the accounts that you're passionate following, and the algorithm is very good. If you look at my reels, it's all cat videos, kids getting hurt, and drinking wine. It's like describes the exact same life phase as I'm in right now.
Spoken like a true millennial.
Yeah, right. But I look at I don't know many recruiters that are like, LinkedIn's great, it's awesome, like there's nothing wrong with it, don't change it. People come to us to get rid of their LinkedIn licenses, and we try to honor that commitment. We try to deliver for them. That being said, I like to look at a product as, how can we eventually play nice in the sandbox with them? How can we have a better, stronger integration with that? Because I think LinkedIn has a huge, valuable data set that we take advantage of in our platform. And so I think ultimately, at the end of the day, recruiters just want an easy way to find and engage with candidates. And, I think they're looking for that next platform that's going to give them that opportunity and make it easy for them. We take on the pain points that recruiters have, both in finding, talent and also within our own product. We're certainly not a perfect product yet. We're getting there. That's why we love our slogan for recruiters by recruiters, because we listen to everything that they have to say. And we want to get to the point where that we are just making it ultimately easier for recruiters at the end of the day, whether that's through LinkedIn, whether that's through us. We have job board integrations now. What can we do to really speed up the process? Because as we all know, when you try to do that with recruiting, it always bites you in the butt.
Job board integrations sounds interesting because obviously, on both the candidate and recruiter side, whenever you hear about a new job board, it's like super hyped, or like everybody loves their secret job board or their, their little ace in the hole. Because we have this mentality that recruiting is zero sum and you have to get there first before somebody else either finds the candidate or finds the job. And like the ultimate reality is that just isn't it. Like requisitions are time boxed, sure, and we have goals, but it's back to that timing piece. Unfortunately, we just have this idea that like we need to climb over the other person or keep something secret or hidden in order to get ahead. When I think about job board integrations, can you share a little bit more about what that looks like for a like technology implementation? Do recruiters have to post requisitions directly through hireEZ, or are they posting on job boards? And how do you reduce like accidental spend bloat?
Yeah. Everything happens through the applicant tracking system. And so the second the job is uploaded within your ATS and it gets pushed out to job boards, it also can get pushed out to hireEZ as well. And it's a simple, with job board integration, it's a simple, just go ahead and, add candidates from job board and then you're set. That's it. And there's no, everything follows the exact same behavior that you're set up within the job board. So there's no overspending. There's nothing like that. It's whatever agreement that you have. It's just you get that inflow of candidates. And so not only are you accessing the open web candidates that are in our database, I think the next valuable set of candidates that you have is within the ATS that we refresh and pull back in and give you stronger insights into what your ATS actually looks like. And then you can supplement that with the job board candidates as well. So you can really pull in from multiple different sources and actually look at everything simultaneously as well, including those who are applying to your job. So it's just that, to me, that just makes it easier because we're minimizing tabs.
And who doesn't love that?
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is you're able to pipe in a candidate pool without having to enter in a Boolean search to return a query on those profile matches. It'll almost be live applicant submissions and then potential match considerations piped in from the database.
Yeah, absolutely. We already have that. What I find with recruiters is they absolutely love to do the Boolean still. So we still have those filters available. I think that, Boolean, every recruiter needs to know. It's like knowing math, right? Know what it's doing. And the whole point of why you're using Boolean. Glenn, Kathy, and I always like to remind people that Boolean isn't about finding people. It's about eliminating people. Right. And then, so our algorithm that definitely makes it easier from a matching standpoint. And we do that on applicant match. So inbound applicant match, we'll do a ranking. We do them within your ATS as well. So how likely are the people going to be willing to accept a job for you right now? And we do that by the success of the campaigns that you were launching previously and where they're at currently in their career. So if you're doing a good job and you're continuing to nurture candidates and these candidates are still staying engaged with your brand, we're going to say, hey, this is a candidate applied 2 years ago, and they're likely going to be receptive to an email right now. And then we'll give those suggestions. It's like, you need to run a search in the open web. Like, here's what our matching algorithm says. And then you can also supplement from job boards too and pull those in. So we don't have matching technology on top of job boards. We rely on the job board technology to do that. So that still acts the same, but you can still pull them into the pipeline in your talent pools with the click of a button.
That sounds really interesting. We're obviously talking about, recruiting in tech. So engineering, product design, go-to-market, sales, marketing, corporate G&A type roles. These are like high-paying jobs in, often venture-funded, private equity, publicly
Yeah.
traded
All jobs.
organizations.
We do all jobs now.
All jobs,
All
amazing.
jobs.
What you just described from a technology standpoint sounds like leveraging an open source LLM
Mhm.
uh, or an open API LLM to optimize natural language processing. As we think about these high paying jobs and also the like tip of the iceberg moment we're at from a technology perspective and what these LLMs are capable of, what considerations do you have for inclusivity and access from underrepresented groups?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because it's something that's quietly disappearing from our space. And when you also see the elimination of a lot of recruiting and sourcing jobs, that's not going to help the cause, right? And I think it's so important for organizations to have a diverse talent pool. Give everyone equity to have the same playing field as the rest of the candidates. I remember seeing a statistic a couple of years ago. I've had trouble tracking down the exact source, but it basically said if an underrepresented talent like a woman or an African American is applying for a job and they have three other majority candidates that they're up against, there's a 0% chance that they will get the job. And that's pretty eye-opening to know that, like, wow, you're going in 25% odds, but really the odds are zero. Is that you need to add in more and more talent and just give everyone an equal chance to get the job. And without us realizing that they already don't have an equal chance, they're not going to be set up for success. I'm not ashamed to say I have a position open right now, and I reached out to a recruiter and I was like, can I please interview some women? Like there's you know what? And it's she's doing a good job contacting women and everything. It turns out one of our restrictions is turning off a lot of women for the job. So I've kind of looked back into that, and that was good feedback that she provided me. But we still offer features for recruiters to be more successful in identifying underrepresented talent. And I hope we don't lose, just because maybe your organization is losing sight of that. I hope recruiters don't continue to champion the cause and try to get their talent pools as diverse as possible. Because to me, you're not making the decision, but if you can provide a diverse slate, then you've done your job.
That's a valid point, and I appreciate the sentiment behind what you just shared. I remember sandboxing a similar tool, and it just had and I don't know if hireEZ is this way. So if it is, it's no shots fired. It was just like it was selecting like a racial checkbox within the search parameter. And I remember I flagged it and sent them an email just like to understand a little bit of the search logic, because there are certain ways to identify individuals from underrepresented communities through different hiring initiatives. And it's like a holistic view when you're working a requisition. And this felt so just wrong for the way to do that by just checking a box. And that was one of those situations where it's like, I can actually do this the right way. And I, as a practitioner, want to do this with Boolean.
Yes. Yeah.
And not just check a box, because then it immediately raises the flag of, well, what is the technology behind that checkbox actually doing to assume race of a potential data scrape from a GitHub or LinkedIn profile? What are those natural language processing functions that it's scraping for? And how can we do this in a way that is truly more inclusive?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, just some thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm not a big fan of filtering down to a specific underrepresented group and only targeting that group, because I think that's not going to focus on the position. Like to me, it's like it's almost the same thing, but I think it's bigger than that. And I think it's more like, just first off, this goes beyond your recruiter brand. This goes to your company's brand as well. What are they doing to attract these individuals? That's like the most important thing, right? But for what recruiters can do is just make sure that the whole process is like EEOC friendly. And that's something too that I'm very passionate about. That I've worked with Keith with the EOC. I've talked to Sherm about this a lot. I've talked to HRCI. Before I retire in this industry, I would love to see every single recruiter be EEOC certified with like the government holding licenses, and I think that's going to be so important with the evolution of artificial intelligence, right? It's knowing the rules, knowing how to play fairly. I think all it takes is one massive organization to come in and say, no, we're going to make sure all of our recruiters do this. And we're only going to work with organizations and technology that is also certified. Technologies, we have to get certified. There's SOX compliance, there's AI compliance now. There's a lot of different like compliance checks that we have to have. And if we ever want our industry to hold any credibility, then let's go ahead and get certified and understand all the governing laws that we have to abide by. We can't just rely on the ATS to do it for us. But I think just with those understanding, recognizing we have a bias, finding technology that will help us get us there, and partnering with the business to ensure that there is an equal opportunity, to me, that's going to help move the needle in a better direction than where it currently is today.
I love that take, Shannon. That is such an ambitious goal.
I know.
Please know you have my support.
Doesn't like to do it. Sherm doesn't want to do it, by the way.
It's a great North Star. And I think there are ways to implement a framework operationally in certain segments to move forward with that type of initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Hiring and recruiting is far too vast to have a one size fits all solution.
Yep.
Like there's no one right way to work a rec. There's no recruiting emergency room or recruiting jail. So I think ultimately, if we have this continued evolution of thought leadership for how we continue to serve our business, that is the type of revolutionary thought we need.
Mm-hmm.
You've been around this industry. You've seen a lot of trends. You've seen also market corrections and ups and downs, which is tremendously valuable. Things are never as good or as bad as they seem when it comes to work and perhaps tech startups and the economy. So as we think about these evolutionary changes of the field, it makes me think about the last maybe decade where we've seen and heard from a lot of the same voices at conferences. The conferences are in the same locations. The websites look the same, as if they're going to steal our identity when we submit our checkout information. There's a lot that is evolving, and I think we're headed there with new and emerging conferences and communities. But that component of maybe we do something different, we get a certification, we have some of these emerging voices or folks that have done some of the thought leadership over the last few years evolve. How do you think about giving platform and forum to new voices as you continue to lead and advance in your career in the industry?
That was the most important thing to me when I was leading SourceCon, and it's still really important for me at hireEZ because we do a lot of events. And we have a lot of different voices that speak on behalf of the industry. I entered this industry super young and got on stage quickly. There was a small group of us. There's myself. We had Matt Charney, Kyle Lagunas, Matt/Will Stanny, and a few others that we were all the same age. We were all like early 20s. We thought our shit didn't stink. We hadn't failed enough, but we had good, strong ideas. And we were really passionate about sharing them. And people were willing to give us a stage. And our sessions were always well attended. And we've all continued to kind of ride that momentum. And you kind of seen that trend from the people who got on the stage early in their careers, from blogging earlier, being popular on social media, to the authors and stuff like that now today. To be quite honest, I haven't seen the next generation of people come and get on stage, right? I haven't seen that next big influence of voices. And that's a shame. It's something that is missing from our space. I think when you look at events and how they're no longer as popular as they once were, online content isn't as picked up as it once was. Oh my gosh, when we would send out a SourceCon article, if it didn't get 100,000 like views, then that article is a failure. Now I would question if they get to 1,000. Just because I just don't think that people find that stuff as valuable anymore, which is a shame because that content's great. So I do think we need the next influence of speakers, right? I look at RecFest as a huge opportunity for new voices to come forward. I look at, podcasts that are happening in this space. I look at our events. I look at SourceCon. There's so many events that can pave the path for new young voices that I really hope we see that there. Because again, when I look back and talk about things that we've been talking about for 15, 20 years, what's going to be passionate about the next generation and who's going to lead that charge? Like nobody wants to see a 40-something-year-old person, give advice on AI anymore. Like, let's hear it from a 25-year-old, right? Like what works for them. And so what's going to work? I think that's why we had a voice back then, because we were thinking of the future. We still are, but like, I would like a perspective from someone 20 years younger than me. I'm only 29, but
9-year-olds out there sourcing.
Yeah, but I'm desperate to find that next big voice in our space. Like I really, really am. I'm looking at that at like the top level leadership point of view as well, because you have like the cool kid conference voice in our space, and then you have like the big industry analyst type spaces, type voices, and I think there's a big opportunity for some new blood in that as well. Absolutely.
I agree. The first barrier I see is corporate budgets drying up for, a $2,500, $3,000 learning and development trip to take a few days off desk, especially if you're in like a G&A group, like a recruiter or an HR seat, and you're in an IC level role. Like your VP's not signing off on a vacation to RecFest to hang out, or they're certainly not sending you to Vegas.
Yeah.
But when I go and I see those teams and those individuals, it gives me a little bit of hope that, okay, there are like companies out there. I think like last year at RecFest, like all the Amazon folks had like t-shirts, and there are like 50 of them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great. Amazon needs to do some work, and the people are here to do it. But like, what about that person that doesn't work for a big name company, who's really passionate about this, who has questions, who needs to be like cut into the fold? And that's something that I think of is like, okay, how do we get more budget for this? Maybe there's a way for vendors or the community to have some sort of sponsorship or an endowment to get more voices onto those stages, or even just to attend and be a part of the dialogue.
That'd be so cool. If I was at SourceCon, I would love to start something like that. We always did fun stuff there. We'd always, do community initiatives to make sure people were there, right? From a ticket point of view or a hotel point of view. Would love to see that again. I just think it's not going to get better. It's certainly not. You're absolutely right. It's these cities are expensive. Events are expensive. They're very expensive for us to sponsor. We're pulling back just because the return is just no longer there.
Yeah.
But to challenge that, what could it look like, right? Maybe big events aren't as successful as they used to be, but our small events, our chapters, that's how I got started. We had this little networking group in Nashville called TANS, and I was a sponge back then. I was a sponge. You could have told me I had to run 10 miles to be a good recruiter every single morning, and I would have ran 11. Like I was, they gave me the job title of administrative assistant of all things awesome and cool, or something like that. And I, like, anyone who wanted to speak, I was like, your assistant. The two Matts ran it in Nashville, Matt Lowney, Matt LeBlanc, and two of my good friends today. And I just looked up to them, and every time they'd give me an opportunity to speak or just to ask questions or whatever, that, like, to me, that was like so fun. We'd get, like, sometimes these events were like as small as maybe 20 people. They're always over lunch, and sometimes they felt like there was 100 people in the room. Krill Butter would always sponsor, so we always had free lunch, which was like, when you're 25 and have no money, it's like awesome. And we're trying to do that too, like in a roadshow format. We're trying to show up at cities and take people out to dinner, but maybe something creative like that, where you could connect with people in a local community on a more intimate level. Local events like TalentNet is like one of my favorite events here in Dallas. Michigan Recruiters, amazing event. Tim Sackett puts that on. There are, so you got Recruit DC. It's like there's so many cool events out there, and so don't let budget like distract you from that, because it's not as expensive to go somewhere locally that I think any business or yourself could pay for. Some of the stuff is actually, I don't think $3,000 is just like, that's a lot. But, and guess what? I've seen tickets that are more than that. But $300, that'll pay for itself by far, because what you learn is off stage, not on stage. So
Yes, absolutely. And when I think about that dynamic against this emerging generation, and even just our relationship to work changes as we evolve, as we have different roles, serve different clients. And I think the pandemic really kind of jacked up that in-person networking lifestyle. We were so out of it that a lot of us are now, it's almost like a little obstacle to overcome, or an extra friction point to say yes to something. And major cities are always good for networking and happy hours, because it's motivated by, do I want to sit on a train for an hour, or do I want to hang out and do a happy hour and then catch the late train home? But even in cities like Denver, we used to have like some cool talent and recruiting stuff going on before the pandemic, and it definitely died down. But it's all about sourcing and, fishing where the fish are, and figuring out, okay, where is this community? And if it moves online, how do we do that in a way that feels authentic? There's nothing worse than when you like see somebody online who's got great memes or a great digital profile, and you meet them in real life and they just are so boring and the opposite of what their digital persona is.
So often.
And that's always my advice for young people. Like, I'm a little bit older than I look. And in terms of advice for young folks, it's always like, just put yourself out there, like take risks emotionally, socially.
Yeah.
Like, it can be hard to reach your hand across an aisle and say, hi, I'm Brandon. Like, what do you do? What are you working on? That's scary, but you become a better person by practicing and developing that muscle and that strength, that social strength. And I think that's what we're missing.
Yeah.
We have connectivity without community.
We talked about this at the last Recruiter Therapy episode, and then I wrote about it in yesterday's For Recruiters by Recruiters newsletter. And us doing remote work, and I've been remote since 2009, but really damaged us because we were used to leaving the house. We were used to going to the happy hours. We were used to interacting with people on a daily basis. Monday, when I worked at our office in Mountain View, I got there at 7:30. 2 people were there before me. And I left at 7:30 at night. And I could have stayed probably 2 or 3 more hours. And like, I had to cancel half my meetings when I was there because I forgot how busy you are when you get to talk to people face to face. Whiteboard, share ideas, people have questions and stuff like that too. And it was like that 12-hour day felt like a 4-hour day. And I missed that. And my son inspires me. We recently took the train to Fort Worth, and from there we took a bus to the Children's Museum, which was like train and a bus. He was like, that was the best day ever. In the Children's Museum, outside of it, there's a dinosaur exhibit where you can sit in the sand and you can dig for dinosaur bones. And it's hot. It's like 98 degrees outside, but he wants to go dig for the dinosaur bones. So go ahead. There's one little girl in the sandbox, doing the same thing he was. He grabbed a shovel and a basket or something, and immediately walked up and ran up to her, and those two just started playing. Instant friends, ran around together. Like, there was no, what is your name? What do you do for a living? Where do you live? What car do you drive? Are you married? It was like, there's no judgment. It was so beautiful to see that. And I just watched them the whole time, and I've been like, this is like, we got to think like 4-year-olds. Like, we do, just walk up to someone and just be genuinely kind, because those two just wanted someone to play with. Right. And my son's an only child. So it's like, he doesn't have day-to-day experience where gets to interact with anyone. So I was very, very happy to see that. And I wish as a world we can get back to that. And I mean, because like even when people walk up and sit next to you on a plane, you're like, why can't, well, first off, there's a reason why I don't like to talk to that person next to me, because that could be a 4-hour conversation.
Talking
but
your ear off.
but it's that whole attitude, and I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think that's what made conferences so fun back in the day. It's like you guys were all there for the same purpose. Like, boom, there's your tribe.
That was a really beautiful story. That actually like really touched me, Shannon. Thank you for sharing that. We would all benefit, I think, from a little bit more play and a little bit more fun and a little bit more wonder and awe in the world around us. Recruiting to me is special because as a result of the work, the daily motions, the grind, we get to build these communities. And you get to a point in your career where sometimes you're placing folks that you've placed once or twice in the past, or a hiring manager you've worked with is then seeking advice 2-3 jobs down the road. You get to see people's careers grow if you place that early SDR or that entry level software engineer. And to me, there's a lot of ways to make a living. And like, if this isn't inspiring or motivating for people to make that human connection, like, my encouragement is to go do something else.
Yeah.
Like,
well said.
And my hot take is, I think this market correction and these recruiter layoffs are actually beneficial and needed and welcomed for the industry, despite the volatility, despite the financial insecurity. Heck, I've managed and navigated like handfuls of rifts. A lot of people have, but ultimately, if we are going to persevere and evolve as an industry, it's necessary, like any market correction.
I couldn't agree with that more. It's so well said. And it's like, with the emergence of technology and things that are happening, I think it's the recruiters who ultimately are there to make a difference in people's lives that will ultimately thrive with everything that's coming down. And so, will recruiter jobs get eliminated by technology? Absolutely. Will they all be eliminated? No. And I'd love to believe that the good ones will outlast that by, just shining in ways that AI can never do it themselves. So, or itself. That's not a person yet.
Yet. And like any new technology, it gives us more time, but that time is absorbed by the entity we serve to meet our financial security and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. Like, it's never like, oh, sweet, AI is going to do this, so now we work 30 hours a week. Like, this is America.
I
know. But I think when we think about moments of technology innovation that meet a market dynamic with adversity like this, we need to focus on the fundamentals that make our business function necessary and efficient. And this is the sports analogy warning. Like, a sports team, if they're down in a game and it's down to the wire, like, what does their coach do? Or if they're in a season that's slumping and they're on a losing streak, what do? They focus on the fundamentals.
Yeah.
They don't try to do all of this new crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe once in a while they get away with a trick play, but 9 times out of 10, it's fundamentals. We always talk about recruiting being an art and a science. And I think like we need a little bit more art right now to complement that science. There's an over-index in science. And I know you work with a vendor. I've worked with HR tech vendors. It's exciting. It's fun to go to the shiny object. What are those fundamentals for you as you navigate the vendor side, but also recruiter practitioners?
100% hard work. Hard work. It is. We talked about this during our leadership meetings at hireEZ this week. And I brought up this analogy. When I was a swimmer, when I coached swimming, the first 80% of your career, you are just grinding, working extremely hard. You are developing that base, that ethic, right? And then the last 20%, you're focusing on those fundamentals and you're fine-tuning your craft and you're getting better. Let the generation that's coming, let them work their butts off. Let them fail. Let them embarrass themselves. Let them send that bad email. Let them have an awkward conversation. Let them know what it's like not to research that role you're recruiting for. Let them know what it's like to not ask the right questions during an interview, right? Like, we all come from the school of hard knocks in our space, right? There's no degree how to do this. So you can still write your own path. And I think that like when recruiters can be humbled by candidates and by hiring managers, and they can really perfect their own craft, all while keeping what got them in this industry in the first place as their motivating passion. I think that is what we need. Less handholding, more action. And that's really what it is. Like, for example, bring back the call sheets. Why aren't, if SDRs, all they do is smile and dial, why aren't new recruiters? I get we have technology, but like talk about fundamentals, right? And that's hard work, right? It's cold calling. I mean, they don't have to deal with like all the stay-at-home wives that I used to have to deal with. They're like, "Why are you calling my husband?" I was like, "I have a job for him. What kind of job?" I was like, it's like, you sell the wife first. It was like it's just, I look like technology's gotten great, but that doesn't mean we change how we do things. It just means that we get a little bit smarter. But what's something that trumps intelligence? Hard work. So
I love that. I saw somebody recently say that it's never been an easier time to be a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that statement?
I agree. I do think it's never been easier, but I would challenge that because we still have that misconception. Recruiting is no longer about who finds that candidate first. It's who got the candidate to respond first, right? And that's what we're forgetting. And that's not easy to get a response from a candidate. Milliseconds to find one, but actually getting someone's attention, that's hard work. And so in perfecting that craft. And I just learned that, the average industry response rate is around 10% for emails. And the majority of recruiters don't even track that. Dude, I come from a 80% time. Because it was different. You weren't sending as many emails.
Yes.
So tells me, yeah, it's easy. But because anyone can send an email, but who's sending the good ones?
It's true. It goes back to what you said about being an emerging voice in the space earlier in your career. The internet was just smaller back then. I think like you talk to somebody who's like in tech in late 40s and like if they're on Twitter, like they know the actual people that were on Twitter. It's like an OG community. But it's so true because now people interact differently. There's fake profiles, and in a generation that may not have that almost naive enthusiasm that perhaps we did to put all of our interests and data on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Every podcast I'm listening to is getting an ad for Delete Me. Delete Me is not sponsoring this podcast, but it'd be a lot cooler if they were. And when I think about how do we reach people who may be offline, I think that's like this fun full circle challenge. Because when I got into recruiting, it was like scanning PDFs into a resume, finding folks that didn't have a digital profile. Recruiting's never a dull moment, and neither are recruiters. That's why I love connecting with other recruiters and people in the space, because if we ultimately are connecting people and their passions to their work, supporting them through moments and decisions that involve that hierarchy of needs and their financial security, like that to me is incredibly humbling and also very fulfilling. I also just find recruiters to be interesting people. We've not always been on the straight and narrow, a lot of us, and we've done a bunch of different things. And I think that's what makes us able to connect with other people.
Yeah.
Being a great recruiter, I think often comes down to being a good storyteller, being a good connector, and not necessarily the math or the quantitative behind what drives that conversion moment.
Agreed. So well said.
Well, Shannon, this has been an absolute privilege. Where can people stay up to date with what you're doing?
Yeah. Wow. Stay up to date with what the best place is just subscribe to the For Recruiters by Recruiters newsletter. It is our Join Recruiter Therapy. So recruiter therapy we do every other week. It's an hour long. Just a panel of us just talking about issues, and the chat is where you want to be. It is busy. It's hard to keep up with. It is really awesome, and it's probably like the most engaged community out there. And I think people really come. It's what it sounds like, recruiter therapy, right? And then the For Recruiters by Recruiters newsletter, I take snippets from that, and we talk about today's issues, and we kind of like boil it all together just to be the voice of reason. I like to be. And again, the comments that come out of that, I think, are just really good, intelligent debates that happen within our space. And I think if you're looking to learn, if you're looking to grow, if you're looking just to engage, those are the two best places where you'll see me hanging out.
Amazing. Yeah, that recruiter therapy chat gets rowdy.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for joining the pod, and we'll keep in touch.
Excellent. Thanks, Brandon.